Hi guys, welcome to Deep Diver. In the last video, we discussed the syntax of function and explored Go's powerful and unique feature of returning multiple values from a function. We also discussed the concept of named return values, which enables naming of the return values from a function as well. In this video, we will be continuing our function exploration. Let me go to the VS Code and create a new folder and file where I will be doing all the coding in this video. So this is my VS Code. I will add a new folder here. I will name this as 4 underscore functions 2 as it is our second video on functions. And inside this, I will create a new file. Let me name this as functions2.go. So here again, I will use the package main as we want to execute this file directly. And then we must have this main function. So now we are good to start. Let me introduce a multi-line comment here. Functions are first-class citizens in Go. It means functions in Go are treated like values. What are example of values? An integer, a string, a float, etc. So just like these values, a function in Golang can be assigned to a variable. A function in Golang, just like a value, can be passed as an argument to a function, and just like a value, it can be returned from a function. So these three concepts are nothing new. We already know this, but in context of values. So let me talk about these three cases one by one. Before that, let me add a couple of functions here which I will use to explain these three cases. So let us add a function add, which will return basically the addition of two numbers. Return a plus b. Similarly, let us add a function subtract, which will return the difference of two numbers. Let us look into the first case. Functions in Golang can be assigned to a variable. If you talk about a value for the first case, we can assign any values. X is equal to 10 or str is equal to a string. We can do like this, right? Similarly, we can assign function to variable as well. Let us see how we can do that. I will comment this out. The first thing, we need to declare a variable. Let us call it f_add, which basically means function add. Then we will use colon equal operator. Then we need to assign a function to this variable. How we can do this? We can easily do this by using the name of the function. Here we have two functions, so we'll just use that function name here, add. Similarly, we can have one more function f subtract, which can assign this subtract function. Okay, so like this we can assign a function to a variable. So here it is giving compilation errors, declared and not used. So let us use this in a print statement. So what I want to print here is, just like if we would have this x is equal to 10 and str is equal to Ravi, then the type of this x will be integer and the type of this str will be string, right? Similarly, I want to know the type of this f_add and f_sub. So for getting the type, we already know we can use %t. I will also use a new line here, and I will pass the parameter corresponding to this %t, which is f_add. Similar thing we need to do for subtract f_sub, %t/n. Then we need to pass the parameter f_sub. Okay, so let me now try to run this code. I will open my terminal. So here we can see Golang course. So let us change our directory to 4 underscore functions 2. I will clear these things. Now let me run this code. Go run, file name is functions2.go. So here we are getting the type of this fadd and fsubtract as output. So here you can see the type of fadd is func, then the input parameter, which is basically two integers it is taking, and then it is returning an integer. Similarly, if sub has the similar kind of type, it is a function which takes two integers and returns an integer. Okay, now let us move forward. When we assign a value like this on line number 22 to a variable, when we use that variable we get the corresponding value, right? Now here we are assigning the variable a function. Then if I use that variable, what will gonna happen? So when a variable holds a value, using that variable gives the value. But when a variable holds a function, using that variable will basically execute the code present inside the function it holds. For example, this fadd is having this add function. If we use this fadd, then it will basically execute the code inside this add function. Similarly, for fsub, we are assigning this subtract function to this fsub variable. So using this fsub variable will basically execute the code inside this subtract function. So now let us use this variable. I will add fmt.println so that we can print the values being returned from this function. Fadd, how we can add this function fadd? We need to provide the input parameter, right? So this fadd accept two integers, so let us say 10, 20 we are passing. Similarly for fsubtract, we can use the same print statement but replace this fadd with fsubtract. So if I run this code again, go run functions2.go, you can see the output is printed, and this we were printing the type which is still there, and this new line we have added fadd, which is basically calling the add method, is printing 30, and fsubtract, which is basically calling this subtract method, is printing -10. So I hope you understood the first case, which was assigned to a variable. Let us talk about the second case. Just like values, function can be passed as an argument to a function. Yes, function can be passed as an argument to a function. So if we would have to call this add or subtract method directly, how we will call? Add 100 to 100. So here what we are basically doing, this 100 and 200 are values, and we are passing these values as an argument to a function. In the similar way, we can also pass a function to a function. Let me show you an example of that. So first thing, we need to define a function which can take the function as an parameter, right? So let me do that. I will define this function operation. Let us say it takes two integers first, and then the third parameters it take is of type function. Now we first need to give this parameter name, let us say f, and then we need to give the type of the function. So the type of a function includes what are the input and what is the output. First we'll use the func keyword, then let us say input it takes it integer and output is takes integer. Now we need to give what will be the output of this operation function. So don't get confused. This parameter which we added here, we have also given a return type which corresponds to this function parameter only. Now we also need to provide the return type of this operation function. So let us say it also returns an integer, and here we can do that. Let me rename this f to op, which basically for operation. So we'll do return op, and now what we'll do, whatever function is getting passed, we'll pass this two integers parameter which we are getting in this operation function. So now let us use this operation function. How we gonna use it? So here we will use it like this. First, let us say I want to pass the add function to this parameter. So what this operation function will eventually do, internally if we pass add here, it will call add on a and b, right, which will basically do the add operation. So we can write here sum colon equal, the name of the function is operation. We need to pass first two integers and then the function we want to execute here. So here let us say I want to execute add, so I am passing the add here. Similarly, we can calculate the diff between two numbers. We'll use the same function operation. We'll pass again 100, 200, and then what we'll do? Then we'll pass the third argument as add. Okay. Now let us use these variables in a print statement. fmt.println sum, and then use sum. fmt.println will printing diff, pass diff here. Let us run this code again. Clear, go run functions2.go. So you can see the first two line here correspond to our new output. So here is basically adding the values here using this function return a plus b. Again we are, oh, I have by mistake I have called the same function add. So let me change this to, we want to pass here a subtract. Okay, now let me try to run this again. This time as we have passed the sub here, so it is giving the diff as -20. Let me discuss one more thing related to the second case. Let us add a new function multiply. Maybe let us say this time it takes a float. Okay, it takes two float and returns a float. Return a into b. Now let us try to use this multiplication function. Let us have product equal operation, will pass like 5 into 6, and then we want to use this multiplication function which we added. So let us pass multiplication here. So here you will see it is giving a compilation error. Cannot use multiplication value of type func a float 64, b float 64, and the return type float 64 as function int. So whenever we want to pass a function to another function, we need to make sure the type of the function which are passing is the same as defined as the parameter. So here it can only take the function which are taking two integers and input and returning one integer at output. But here what we have done, here we are trying to pass a function which takes float and returning a float. So to make it work, we can make this input type to int, and also the return type has to be changed at int. Now you will see that compilation error is gone. It was giving one more compilation error which is basically declared and not used. So let us now use this prod variable as well. So prod. So if I run this code again, you will see it is giving, so for this prod thing we have passed 5 and 6, so it is printing 30, which is our expected result. Now let us look into the third case. So just like a value, a function can be returned from a function as well. So here for example on line number 14 we are returning a plus b, which will be basically be evaluated to a value and then will be returned from this function. Similarly for the subtract function we are doing a minus b. This a minus b basically evaluates to a value and get returns from this function. So just like a value, we can also return a function from function. Now let us try to understand how we can do that using an example. Let us suppose I declare a function like this, function multiplier, okay, which takes an integer. I'm naming this integer at times, and now it returns a function. Let us say the type of the function it need to return is this function takes an integer and returns an integer. As this function is returning a function which takes an integer input and returns an integer output, we need to return a function of the same type here. So let us try to do that. We'll say return and then function of type int and int. Okay, let us name this input parameter as x, and now we need to define the body of this function which we want to return. So here we will have one more return statement, okay, and here we'll add x into times. So with whatever value we will call this multiplier function, that will get used in this internal function which we are returning. Okay, so if we pass this multiplier function 2, then this return statement will evaluate something like x into 2. Okay, which basically means whatever value we pass as x in this internal function, it will be get multiplied by 2 and the result will be returned. So which is basically doubling the every value we passed in this internal function. So now let us try to use this multiplier function. Let us suppose we want a function which can double the value we pass to that function. So as this multiplier function can return a function, we can use this multiplier function. We'll have a variable defined double, and then we'll use this multiplier function and we'll pass 2 here. Okay, finally what we'll have stored in this double, this function with this times replaced by 2. Okay, now let us try to use this double variable which currently holds a function. So we will use the print statement, and inside the print statement we will use this variable to call the function. So fmt.println double. Suppose we want to calculate double of 10. Okay, and we want to also calculate double of 1000. So if I run this code, so you can see we have double of 10 20, double of 1000 as 2000. Let me explain it one more time. So when we use this multiplier of 2, this double holds a function which is basically this function with this times replaced by 2. So when we use this double of 10, this x is substituted by 10 and this times was already substituted by 2, so 10 into 2 we got 20. Similarly for 1000, this x was substituted with value 1000 and this times was already substituted with value 2 when we created a new function on this line number 36. Now let us suppose we want a function we can triple our values. Okay, so let me create a variable which will hold a function, and this time we will call this multiplier function with value 3. Okay, so here in this case what will happen, this multiplier of 3 will basically return this function, but this time instead of 2 this times will be replaced with 3. Okay, so whatever value will pass inside this function, the return value will be thrice of the input value. So now let me use this triple variable to calculate the triple of a number. So we'll again use the print statement. Okay, we'll use this triple variable. Let us say we want to calculate triple of 30. One more example we will take. This time we want to calculate triple of 1000. If I save and run this again, you will see the triple of 30 is printed 90 and triple of 1000 is printed, which is 3000. I hope you understood all these three cases. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.